Hello again. Now, the Road Freight Association is warning businesses against moving goods today to minimize the risk of attacks during protest action organized by the EFF across the country. Well, to unpack this more for us this hour, I'm joined by the association's Chief Executive Officer, Gavin Kelly. Gavin, good afternoon. Welcome to today. So what have you, as an association, communicated to your members?
Good afternoon, Dan, and good afternoon to all your listeners. I'm sure everyone is glued to their televisions or to their social media devices, watching with interest what's happening today. Very big day for South Africa on many levels. Right, about a week ago, we had said to our members and to the broader road freight industry that it would probably be better in terms of mitigating risks, so reducing the exposure to risk, if they try to get as many deliveries done that would have been scheduled for today, Monday, 20 March, if they'd got those done before or afterwards. And obviously that's a discussion you have with your clients and your customers. So that's the first thing. The second thing was making sure that the vehicles that are out on the road, wherever they were brought to safe areas, into depots, or in some safe parking areas where they could be looked after. And then, of course, all of their staff either stayed at home for the day or were working in places where their exposure to what could become a very, very violent protest was then reduced. So that's what we'd done about a week ago. And it seems that we've been able to get a fair amount of the vehicles off the road. There are some that are traveling, obviously. There are some commodities and cargoes that need to move. Fuel is a very important one. And in that relationship with the SAPs that we have, we've made sure that there is escorting and that there is good coverage and that they're kept safe wherever they move.
You say with the relationship you have with the police, you've been able to make sure that whichever truck or business is moving goods today is feeling safe. Did you get the sense from the police this time around, for today particularly, that they've ramped up their monitoring capabilities?
Dan, well, I think, just looking at a couple of the visuals we saw now, you can see how controlled and how peaceful those marches were, or those scenes that we saw. Obviously, around the country, there have been a couple of incidents. Earlier this morning, there were tire burnings, and there was some unhappiness, a bit of violence in terms of small-scale destruction of things here and there. But it's been a very, very quiet protest, I think, in terms of what we thought. We've been speaking to the South African Police Services. We've had direct contact with the National Commissioner. We've been very clear about what we need to put in place in terms of communication, in terms of local JOCs, the Joint Operation Centers, in terms of working together. And then we've highlighted areas and or cargo routes that we've seen as being very, very important. So obviously where fuel runs and where it runs to, there are depots around the country, there are hospitals that need to get oxygen, and there are those places that would need to get fuel, especially if load shedding came into play. We've seen a far better proactive approach from the South African Police Services than what we saw in July 2021. And I know that caught a lot of people by surprise, but there has definitely been far better coordination before, far better communication. We've definitely had a far better reception from the South African Police Services. And from what I've seen today, at this stage, and I don't want to jinx it, it's definitely going far better than what we...
Now, Gavin, I mean, a shutdown was meant to, according to the organizers, and it was meant to stop all kinds of activity, but we've seen some activity. But you as an association, from what I've heard you say as well, you've asked truckers not to risk it. Were you not contributing indirectly to the shutdown by stopping trucks?
No, Dan, I don't think so. I think one must always, from the very beginning, think about the risk and exactly how we could get safety or escorting or make sure that routes were safe. There's two ways of approaching this. You can turn around and say, okay, we contributed to the shutdown. I don't think that's true. There are a lot of depots and a lot of retail sectors still working. There are short trips definitely happening. What we have said is that freight that we don't need to move today, if we could postpone it to afterwards or do it before, in the interest of mitigating risk, there are people's lives that are at stake here, then I think we've taken the right decision.
Now, you said when you answered my first question that this is a very important day for South Africa on many levels. What will be the key lessons here? From where I'm sitting, I've just watched how government, the state, late last week started to marshal its resources in anticipation of mayhem today, which we haven't seen, as you said, up to now. What will be the lessons going forward? Because the freight industry is very critical. It's the lifeblood in terms of the economy, moving goods from east, west, north, across import and exports.
Well, Dan, the industry itself has been targeted over and again, not only for issues within the industry itself, and you will recall the whole foreign driver matter, where we had repeatedly called for protection from the South African police services, protection of certain routes. You'll recall the N3 was literally a battleground. And we are still awaiting a fair amount of prosecutorial process in terms of those who created or were part of the mayhem and who hurt people, and some people were even killed. So we were very concerned that this would be yet another day where the South African police services wouldn't show that they were able to ensure law and order, that they could convince the citizens that this was a great place to stay. And secondly, of course, the show of force or the show of determination or the political will, call it what you would, is very important in terms of investment into the country and in terms of a lot of goods that move both into and through the country. So that for us as a freight industry is terribly important.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Gavin Kelly, the CEO of the Road Freight Association. Now,